It's the Resistance Report for November 20th, 2017. We are very excited here at Inequality Media. I'm very excited about the release of our new documentary, Saving Capitalism. Now, just like with the Resistance Report and other videos, the goal of the film is to provide you with a bigger picture of how we got into this mess in our politics and economics, how we can work to change the political system for the better and get out of this mess. Starting tomorrow, the film will be available on Netflix. I hope you'll get a chance to watch it. And now for the Resistance Report. Tonight we are discussing the growing backlash against powerful men like Trump, who abuse their positions to bully and intimidate others. First off tonight, question, why are so many women now speaking about the sexual abuses they have experienced for years? Is there anything unique about the time we're now living through that has encouraged them to end their silence? I can't help but think that their decisions are part of something that's happening throughout much of American society right now, a backlash against what has been the growing domination of America by powerful and wealthy men, and a few women, who've come to believe they can do whatever they want to do, to whomever they choose. Who can forget the heinous comments Trump has made publicly about women?
I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy. You can do anything.
This is all about power, folks. Trump controlled the careers of the women he abused, such as the former Miss Utah, Temple Taggart, and the Apprentice contestant, Summer Zervos. Harvey Weinstein similarly controlled the careers of the women he abused. Sexual assault is one obvious assertion of control and dominance. Other forms of control include economic bullying and the stoking of bigotry to gain political power. Trump epitomized it all, which is why the backlash against bullying, whether as sexual abuse or the arbitrary exercise of economic power or through bigotry, is turning into a giant wave. Trump's abuses of power do not end with sexual harassment. As a businessman, Trump stiffed contractors, used bankruptcy to avoid paying creditors, and wielded lawsuits to threaten critics. Because of his wealth and power, he controlled the economic futures of large numbers of people who didn't dare cross him. As a politician, Trump gained traction by alleging Obama was born in Africa. Remember that? Mexicans are rapists and murderers, and Muslims have to be kept out of America. These mindless allegations would never have been heard if they had come from just a garden variety bigot. But by the time Trump wielded them, he had already become a celebrity capable of commanding and manipulating the media. He had influence over the careers of countless people, including many journalists and producers. Trump's presidency has been a continuation of the bullying on a larger scale. He's bullied everyone who disagrees with him, journalists, judges, members of Congress, his own staff, cabinet, and he's bullied the vulnerable and innocent, dreamers who came to the United States as small children but could be deported because of him, the elderly and sick who may lose their health coverage because of him, needy families who will no longer receive assistance because the massive corporate tax cuts he is pushing will require cuts in programs they depend on. But Trump's bullying has created a huge backlash. Soon after the 2016 election, millions of women and some men marched against Trump, and the resistance was born. And since then, Americans have been rising up against bullying in all its forms. On November 7th, Virginia Republican candidate Ed Gillespie's hate-filled Trump-style campaign for governor of Virginia collapsed in a nearly 9-point defeat to Ralph Northam. Democrats swept statewide elections in Virginia, won the New Jersey governor's race, achieved other victories across the nation. Another consequence, a twin consequence of Trump's presidency, has been a sharp increase in the number of female candidates and winners. An unprecedented number of women have declared themselves candidates for public office so far. More than 20,000 across the country, according to Emily's list. This could be, and it should be, the Democrats' hour, especially if they stand up against the bullies of America and stand for the millions who have been humiliated, intimidated, disenfranchised, disempowered. Now, Democrats will need to gain 24 seats in order to take control of the House in 2018. 24 seats. Now, this is going to be difficult given the amount of gerrymandering and other forms of voter suppression that have been imposed by Republican governors and legislatures. Nevertheless, last month, Cook Political Report, a very reliable barometer of politics, shifted 12 House districts in favor of Democrats. This is a full year ahead of the 2018 midterms. And a poll released at the beginning of November showed Democrats with an 11-point lead over Republicans on a generic House ballot. The Washington Post ABC News poll found that 51% of registered voters say they would prefer the Democrat in their district, while 40% say they would vote for the Republican. The revolt against Trump is a backlash against bullying in all its forms. Powerful and wealthy men who have felt free to impose their will on others, regardless of the pain they cause, are in for a rude awakening. The chorus of courageous voices now speaking out against sexual abuse is a reminder of our obligation, not just women, our obligation, men as well as women, to make our voices heard about injustices that are too often ignored by those in power. In order to achieve lasting change, it's on all of us to speak out against the social injustices and unfair treatment we see all around us. Speaking truth to power is one of the highest forms of public service. So this Thanksgiving week, I am so incredibly grateful to you and for the millions of you who have spoken out since Election Day, before Election Day, but certainly since Election Day last year. Your efforts have already made a huge difference. But the struggle against Donald Trump and for justice and equality is never, never over. And now, for your questions. Luis Carlos Rodriguez, what will be the solution or middle ground between both versions of the tax bill? Well, you know, they're very far apart. The House bill and the Senate bill are very far apart. My hope, honestly, is that they cannot possibly reconcile them. The Senate is much more concerned about this huge debt, $1.5 trillion debt that is going to be created. And that's why in the Senate bill, they terminate all of the individual tax cuts in 8 years, 2025. But they keep the corporate tax cuts permanent. This is going to be a huge problem. I mean, most Americans already understand that this is not a tax cut for them. This is a tax cut for people at the top and for big corporations. The House bill is even worse in many, many ways. I think the polls are going to show a lot of Republicans that the people are against this. And they're going to be up for election or re-election in 2018. I think we're not, my vote right now, my judgment right now, honestly, is we're not going to have a tax bill. But you need to work on it, and I am working on it too. Sue Gongoras, can you comment on the FCC ruling for consolidation? I think it's another tragedy that's being slipped through. Is corporate media in favor of this, or are they trying to fight back? Sue, I think what you're referring to is that the FCC is really on the verge of ending the kind of equal access rule in terms of the internet. And we have to all speak up. I posted something on this page. We have got to speak up and say, no, equal access is absolutely necessary. Net neutrality is absolutely necessary. Elisa Vanover, what's the process for finding a strong leader who will unify the Democratic Party and articulate a positive message that will reach all the people who are disillusioned? And how can we influence our representatives to come together now on leadership and message? This is urgent, and we feel helpless. Well, Elissa, don't feel helpless. We still have Certainly, we have more than 2 years before the presidential election of 2020. And in terms of 2018, I am actually optimistic. There is this groundswell, this upwelling of resistance to Trump and also to all forms of bullying. I think it shows that the people are speaking. Now, who are going to be the particular candidates who emerge as presidential candidates or gubernatorial candidates? Very, very hard to tell. But with this kind of an upwelling, historically, in a midterm election, this surge actually reveals leadership. Leadership will reveal itself over the next year, believe me. Ron Kresh. Is there anybody left in D.C. with some integrity? Ron, that's a big question. Is there anybody not in the pockets of their donors? How can we get big money out of politics so we all have the same influence on our elected officials? Ron, I think, honestly, that's the most important question I deal with almost every day. And that is really what our documentary, Saving Capitalism, debuting tomorrow on Netflix, is really all about. It's about getting big money out of politics. It's the corrosive effect and corrupting effect of big money on our entire economy. And obviously it is these political decisions that determine who gets what. Look at the tax laws. I mean, why is it that just 2 days ago there was a provision slipped into the Senate tax bill that would be a particular tax favor for people with corporate jets? I mean, why do you do that? Simultaneously, you have students who are trying to earn their way through college who are now going to be taxed on whatever earnings they get from doing work as graduate assistants or others at college. So what's the point of those two tax provisions? The big benefit for the corporate people with corporate jets and the penalty for students. It's because the students don't have that kind of lobbying power. They don't have money. The corporate jet set does have money. And so, to me, getting money out of politics is the biggest and most centrally important issue right now in terms of saving capitalism, but also saving democracy. Betsy Anderson, what issues do you consider most important? Where can citizen activists make the greatest difference? Well, Betsy, you beat me to it, or I beat you to it. I think the greatest issue where we can all make a big difference is in all forms, getting all forms of money out of politics. Now, granted, we have Citizens United, the Supreme Court decision to contend with, but we can still, and some states already have, created public financing of elections at the state level. We can have public financing of elections at the federal level. We used to have it. We can also slow down the revolving door between government and business. We can demand full accounting and full disclosure of where every dollar comes from with regard to political campaigns. Don't give up, all right? This is really critically important. I know how gloomy and even frightened and stressed many of you are, because we have not seen this kind of administration, this kind of a presidency in your lifetime, certainly in my lifetime before. And what that means is that we, as citizens of this United States, we have an obligation to protect our democracy. We have an obligation to get more activists than ever before. And so I want to thank you for what you have done again. I want to thank you for what you will do. I want to urge you to take a break over Thanksgiving. Hug your loved ones. Be thankful for what we do have. And make sure that starting next week, we all come out fighting again. I want to just thank people who helped put this together, Andrew Santana and also Kyle Parker, and also our interns, Shada Azamanian, I think that's how I pronounce it, Azamian, and Desiree Oshoyedi. I'm going to get this eventually. Thank you, and see you next week. Sorry, I mangled those.